Hey there, and welcome to the Airlock Module Podcast. I am your host, Yuki Nishimura. Think of this show as a cozy little airlock, a place where we pause, connect, and step between two worlds, Earth and Mars, science and everyday life, life inside the habitat, and discoveries out on EVA. Each episode, I sit down with an analog astronaut or the amazing mission directors, engineers, scientists, support crews who make these simulations possible. Together, we share the real stories of what it's like to live and work in a Mars habitat and the surprising lessons it teaches us about living better here on Earth. Today's guest is someone who truly embodies what it means to lead with purpose, precision, and passion, both on Earth and in analog space. Dennis Miller is the Chief of Operations for the APUS Analog Research Group, where he's led student teams through multiple Mars simulation missions. Before stepping into the world of analog research, Dennis spent 20 years in the U.S. Marine Corps and Civil Military Operations Planning Chief, managing reconstruction projects worth over $20 million and coordinating interagency operations in some of the most complex environments imaginable. He's also a project management consultant for NASA, where he supports procurement and acquisition operations, and even earned the NASA Unsung Hero Award in 2024. With over 2 decades of experience in leadership, mission planning, and systems management, Dennis brings a rare perspective that connects the precision of military discipline, the innovation of NASA, and the collaborative spirit of analog exploration. In this conversation, we'll explore how his journey from the Marines to Mars simulations shaped his view on teamwork, risk management, and what it really takes to run a successful mission, whether it's on Earth or one day on the Red Planet. So we are recording. Hey, Dennis, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, including what you do for work?
Sure, absolutely. So, name's Dennis Miller. I am actually a contractor for NASA. I work at Goddard Space Flight Center, where I oversee scheduling and reporting for all the procurement actions, well, most of the procurement actions that happen at Goddard, all the high-value contract actions.
You've had a fascinating mix of military precision, government contracting, and space research. What was the journey?
Okay, that's a loaded one. Let's start off and say, a lot of it was luck and just being at the right place, the right time. So, talking about my career, we actually have to start in 2 places because I had 2 careers the whole time. So I was in the Marine Corps Reserves. So I did that 1 week in a month, 2 weeks out of the year, and every deployments every now and then. And then I had my regular job. Now, if we go all the way back to the beginning, I was an electronics tech. I actually graduated high school in the electronics program. And my thought process is, hey, I'm going to go ahead and fix TVs, VCRs, because everyone needs TVs and VCRs. Well, fast forward, that's not the case. If your TV breaks, what do? You toss it out, right? So, but I was kind of just turning along with that. And then I joined the Marine Corps at one point. I started off as an F-18 avionics technician, which was a lot of electronics. And I was actually out there on the flight line replacing boxes and testing the systems on the F-18s. At the same time, I was working as a consumer electronics repair guy. Then at one point I was a medical delivery guy. Then I moved into medical repair. And then I actually started working at University of Maryland Hospital repairing respirators. At the same time, my unit got disbanded in the Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps, in their infinite wisdom, thought, here's this F-18 avionics tech guy. Let's put him in civil affairs, because turning wrenches and talking to people are kind of the same thing. Yeah, I'm being sarcastic. So basically what happened is when your unit gets disbanded and you're reservist, they have to send you to another unit or else they're in breach of contract. I could have actually argued and they would have ended my contract, but they have to send you to a unit that is kind of close. Civil affairs had a lot of open places, so they kind of just shuffled me there. So I started doing civil affairs, and I was there for about a year, and then they went ahead and deployed me to Iraq. That was my first deployment. When I got to Iraq, they needed somebody to run the reconstruction program in the area I was in. My AO was actually the size of Texas, a very large area.
Wow.
Keep in mind that this particular billet was actually meant for a major, like an 05, and I was a sergeant at the time. So I was really punching way above my class there. I'm managing this multi-million-dollar program where I am setting up contracts for reconstruction throughout all of Iraq, rebuilding roads, schools, water treatment plants. Never had any experience to do this. And I will say that I did well. I mean, they were very, very impressed. I took that ball and I ran with it. I developed whole new processes that, we were still using up there. I learned so much about what things cost in Iraq and actually how to work contracts in a foreign area with fluctuating currencies and all that stuff that goes into play. So that's how I got into contracting. And I say that because no one ever grows up in school saying, I'm going to be a contracting officer when I grow up. If you ever talk to a contracting officer and ask them how they got there, they always go like, yeah, I kind of fell into it and seemed to work and I kept doing it. So, but almost all contracting officers kind of work. So that's how I got into contracting. And then I just did that for the Marine Corps. And also I was doing mission planning, strategic planning, leadership. And then I did that for 15 years. That's when I hit my 20-year mark. I was almost, I don't want to say forced to retire because I was very ready to retire at that point, but my unit that was actually getting disbanded as well. And they allowed me to stay on just long enough to get my 20 years as I was helping them transition to their new mission, which would be a whole brand new mission set that they did not need me there. So that kind of worked out. And then at the same time, I was working repairing medical equipment at the University of Maryland. And then I got my associate's degree, and then I was able to get a job at the U.S. Army Research Lab, where then I was working.
What did you do there?
Well, actually,
Or can you not say?
Oh, absolutely, I can say. So actually, that I was, so keep in mind, I was an electronics guy, right? I do all electronics, and I got hired as a metallurgist.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
all these dots that don't really line up.
They don't. But I got hired as a metallurgist. So what I did is I worked into what was called additive manufacturing. So everyone's a lot familiar with 3D printing.
Yeah.
But this right here, what I was working with was called cold spray. What it is you actually take powdered metal and you run it through a nozzle. It's actually a rocket nozzle at high pressure, and this powdered metal will actually build a coating. And you can use different types of metal, different mixtures of metal, and you actually just build something up. And it's very dense, very hard. So that's what I was doing is we were making these samples, right? We were doing like pure research, and we'd spray these samples, we'd cut them, and then I would actually mount them on a puck, take it down the machine, polish them down, and take pictures through a microscope. And we're looking at the structures. So there I started to learn how to do metallography, do a lot of lab work. There's a lot of etching, so acid etching. They used to get really concerned when I would be in the lab boiling nitric acid. Yeah, then robotics, because actually the cold spray gun was be sent on a robot. So I learned how to reprogram the robotics. Some basic fabrication, because we did a lot of fabrication. After doing that for so long, I eventually got my PMP. Then I saw a job at NASA. I applied for it, and I didn't think I was going to get the job. If you ever walked into an interview just going, you know what? It doesn't really matter what I'm going to say. They're probably not going to hire me anyways, right? Saw this contracting thing. So I actually rolled up there. I was in a nice suit, and the interview started to happen. And by the way, partners to this day still talk about the story about this guy that came into the interview, because they started asking me questions. And I was like, you know what? Hold on. Give me a second. Let me show you. And I pulled out this little projector, plopped it on there, connected my laptop, and just started taking them through like a presentation of the stuff that I've done.
Oh, wow.
And then at the end, they were kind of like, okay, you're hired. I just went in there hey, what's the worst that can happen? And just,
right.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
And there was not a straight path at all. I will tell you that. But throughout every single one of those steps, I think that I learned something new and gained something new. And even if I missed one of those steps, I don't think that would be as successful as I am today.
Going back to you working on the F-18s, how big of a team were you in?
It was a whole squadron. The whole squadron got cut. 8 birds, 8 jets.
Okay.
And probably 100 some odd maintainers. But so basically is the Marine Corps wanted to cut a squadron. And it just happened to came down that my squadron was the one to be cut. And it was actually down at Andrews Air Force Base. So it was VMFA 321, the Hells Angels, the original Hells Angels, by the way.
Oh,
actually,
really?
They trace the history all the way back to, I believe, Korea, or was it Vietnam? It's one of those earlier wars. So
there were still F-18s flying, right? It was just that unit. Yeah. Okay, so it wasn't like they're getting out of the F-18.
No,
okay.
No, actually, so my squadron had the oldest combat operational F-18s in the Marine Corps, actually in the Navy, and actually in all the services altogether. So we were still working on...
That says a lot about your maintenance ability.
I was like 20 years old, changing out light bulbs that was like 30 years old. We were working with Alphas and Bravos, and they were already on Echoes and Foxtrots versions. Those were the Super Hornets, I believe.
F-18s, are they pretty analog? At least the ones that you guys were working. I'm assuming some were retrofitted with digital screens and whatnot.
Oh yeah. So no, they were actually, a lot of it was digital, fly by wire. Like the screens, they were like the CRTs, and we couldn't swap them out with newer LCD screens because there was problems with weight. So we still had to use a lot of the older parts. But you're talking about like the old CRT tubes, like they were like this long. You had to pull them out of the
I would imagine the newer ones would be lighter.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Lighter and smaller, which means they can pack more stuff behind it. But if you're going to change like all that weight, you have to redesign the whole aircraft.
That's
because
true.
that aircraft is all designed behind that weight and the balance and everything else that's in there.
When you were moved out of that into leading this unit in Iraq?
Yeah, I wasn't leading the unit. I was in charge of the reconstruction program. So civil affairs our job is actually to go out on behalf of the commander to make and leverage relationships. So, everyone in the military has their job. Like you got the trigger pullers, you got the maintenance guys, you got the logistics guys, you got all this. Our job was to actually go out within the population and just find out what's going on. Now, we weren't human. That's human intel. Those are the people that actually go out and like interrogate guys and like sweep. No, our job was to go out. And what we did is a lot of go out and like talk to political figures like mayors, religious figures, imams, and pretty much just kind of like we might go out to a town and we might go to a town hall meeting or meet with the local governor of the area and just go, hey, we're the military here in your town and we'd like to talk to you about your concerns. So, it's about building those relationships because just going in there and not talking, I can back up a little bit, but like the old days of warfare where two armies met themselves in this field and just hacked themselves together, like the good old days of war, that's gone now. So the whole terrain now revolves around urban areas, the enemies hiding within the people, stuff like that. So you have to work with the people, and because you got to know like different cultures, you got to build relationships, you got to do all these things. And these guys are like sometimes they're just stuck on base, and you have this 19-year-old kid, you're going to throw him in Iraq and then say, hey, go talk to that guy.
I assume they give you a list of people to go, like political figures and things like that to go and talk to. I'm assuming they're all vetted, at least background, so that you're not walking into an ambush.
The thing is like, it does happen, but not that often. But our mission is not to look for trouble. So that when you're talking about combat, a lot of them, they're looking for that. Our job, we'll go as like one or two people within a convoy group, and we're going out to a local town hall or something, right? And our convoy group will sit there and set up a perimeter or something, and we'll go inside and also keep in mind that a lot of these guys, like the local mayor or the governor or whoever, like these political figures, they don't want to get blown up either, and they have learned to work both sides, and we know that. So when you're talking about an insurgency such as that, it's like you stay close to that big political figure, there's a good chance like you're going to be okay because he knows what's going on out there. And sometimes you can find out what's going on through him. It's a whole social dynamic. You got to learn all that stuff. But I spent actually most of my time, that was my company's mission. I spent most of my time writing the desk back in the back, running the program, which provided the money that we used to help rebuild some of this stuff, which they would use. So when they came up to local governors, say, hey, what's going on? You got any concerns? It's like, you guys blow up my road and we might use that money to fix the road, or the school's falling apart. And it was also a good way to build relationship, trust, goodwill. It's sometimes you hear it referred to as soft power. We're working and developing and using soft power.
Yeah, I guess I knew something like that had to have happened, but I guess I never really thought about people doing that work.
Yep. Yeah, and we have specific people trained. That's their mission, is to do that.
Such a different set of skills.
Yeah, so there's like just turning wrenches and tracing wires, and then it's like, go talk to this guy and set up a multi-million-dollar contract to rebuild a road. It's like, okay. It's what was referred to needs of the Marine Corps. There you go.
How did you first get involved in the APUS Analog Research Group?
I joined APUS. Right. I was actually working towards my, so I got my bachelor's from UMGC in business administration. And because of my job at NASA and I still had some GI Bill left, I was like, hey, I want to do something space related. So I started searching online and I'm looking at all these space programs, and almost every single one that I came across was all engineering. And keep in mind, I'm doing contract. And I found 2 schools that offered something that was not engineering. And one was in France. That's not going to happen. And then APUS. So space policy. So I got in there and enrolled, started taking some classes. And all of a sudden, one day I happened to see a flyer pop up for ARG, and it was talking about NEMO. Now, NEMO is the underwater analog over there in Florida. And I started looking it up and went, man, that's really cool. So and I went ahead and reached out and I talked to Dr. Miller and Dr. Scott Van Hoy. And then I kind of gave them my resume saying I have all this experience. And they were just kind of like, well, that's great. I think we kind of need a planner. So I started planning 4I, which was our 4th ILMAH mission. And I was the flight director. And I got my FFA clearance because I figured, why not? It wouldn't take anything. I figured I'd make myself a backup person. Well, then I got tapped to be somebody dropped out and they needed a 4th. So I came on as crew person. So I planned everything. I kind of handed off to the flight director that was in line. Then I was like, I'm crew. Okay, I'm just a crew member. No problem. All right, right. We'll follow the plan. And then unfortunately, the crew commander had to fall out. So then I was crew commander. So I eventually led my own planned mission. I did all the plan there at the beginning, and then I got the crew commander, and then we kicked it off. That's how I got in there. Then after that, then it was I think I planned 5I, 6I, and then S1, and then I went ahead and then we got a new flight director. He's awesome, Santi. And then I just started mentoring him, and I took on the role of chief of operations.
Going back to your first analog mission, the ARG 4I, what research did you and your crew members conduct there?
So my crew members, I know one of them, Bo, he did a drone. He did a drone paper, a drone exercise. And then Olivia, she did a plant experiment. And my actually, I didn't really have an experiment. Mine was more of a project or research. Mine was more about, policy, testing out my plan, testing out the operation order, because we didn't do an operation order before that one. So pretty much is all that planning, all that stuff is we kind of gave that a really good test run in 4I. And because I planned it and then I commanded it, I knew exactly what to do. I knew exactly how to run it.
This was all while you're doing your master's program?
Yes. Yes.
And part of that, the master's program, you did a capstone on how to plan an analog mission. 36 pages of very well written document.
Well, the appendices actually link to the actual document. So yeah, it's actually fairly large once you actually go through all the planning documents as well. So yes.
So as chief of operations and flight director, you oversee everything from planning to post-mission analysis. What does a successful mission look like to you?
A successful mission is that no one gets hurt, first and foremost, because safety is always top. And we always consider it successful when that happens. Now, I'm not going to say like, oh, the mission went straight to according to plan, because that will never happen. And we have no illusions of that ever happening. So when we actually talk about mission planning, a lot of it is actually, and this is all done in the very beginning, is we weren't looking for specific directions when we do the mission plan. And that is based upon several reasons. That's based upon the remoteness of the crew and the 20-minute delay. And because of that, we actually have to make our mission plans not so direct, but more of, we had to build a framework to direct the crew on how they should carry out the mission. Now, we can set guidelines, we can set some goals, we can set some schedules, but those right there they're subject to change. When you have a 20-minute delay and something goes wrong, it's going to take you 40 minutes to get an answer. By then, that's a lot of time already wasted. And our mission plans are actually based upon my experience in the Marine Corps, because the Marine Corps operates on something referred to as an expeditionary force, which means that, they are able to carry out their mission without direct support or direct command. And the way they do that is they set up a framework. Basically what it is instead of telling them exactly what to do, is you tell them your intent. My intent is to do X. And that's the same way with the mission plan, is like we give the intent. The intent is for you to conduct a safe mission, maintain fidelity, and complete the research within that order, those three. And once you give them the intent, then you say, here are your constraints, right? You can't do X, Y, Z. You can't get on your phone and get on Facebook. You can't leave the hab without being in a spacesuit. You can't do an EVA without permission. So once you build up those constraints, right? And then what you basically do is then you say, okay, here's my intent. Here's the constraints. Here's the stuff you can't do. You figure out the best way of doing that. And because you hand them that ability, and because they're on the ground, in theory, and in practice, it does happen, is they actually come up with a more efficient way of accomplishing that intent than you would have done if you did a direct order to them.
To that point, the team at Apple and Amazon and some of these other, high functioning companies, they hire the best, and you give them an objective or company vision, the scope of the project, and empower them to do, what they do best to deliver that product or service. What are some leadership lessons from your time in the Marines that you find yourself applying during analog simulations?
I came across this really good image a while back ago, and every time, and once I saw it, and then once I showed it to other people, it just kind of like, oh, it was like a light that went off. Is you can't manage everybody the same way. If you want some kind of a guideline, I mean, there's a lot of it as a gut and just trying to some empathy, understand where people are coming from, and this figure I'm talking about, what it is there's some theories out there. One is called McGregor's XY theory. And the XY theory is the X theory is that you have to treat the people that you're over as if they don't want to work. They're lazy, and you have to constantly crack the whip and tell them, hey, get to work, do this, do that. The Y theory is the opposite, where you're kind of what you're doing is you're telling them, it's like, look, they want to work, but what they really need is they need guidance and support and resources. So there's like two polar opposites, and you can't manage everybody and the Y factor, because if you try to manage, like, I'm talking like 19-year-old Marines in that factor, they'll never get anything done. But if you try to manage like a seasoned pro in the X factor, they're going to revolt and go like, no, just give me what I need and let me go, right? You don't need to be over my shoulder micromanaging. And one of the best ways that I like about this is if you take that XY theory and if you overlap it over Maslow's hierarchy, put the X in the bottom and Y near the top. And this gives you a good baseline, because when you're managing somebody, you're looking at somebody, you can sit there and think like, where do I think they are on that hierarchy? If they're like really young, getting started off, and they're down there at that bottom, just trying to make, you're going to have to treat them in that X manner, where you're going to have to kind of micromanage them, make sure they're doing what they're doing. But if they're up there like late in their career and they're up there at the higher tier right there, then it's like you take a step back, you give them the resource you want, and you let them take the ball and run with it. Not only that, it's like it's just not the person. You got to think about like where they are in life. Like you could have someone that could be a high performer and he's up there at the top, but if he's going through some kind of life crisis and starts to fall down, you're going to have to change your management style with him. So you can't always depend on that as well.
As someone in the leadership role, you have to figure out how to identify where people are on that grid or on that bandwidth.
And but that gives you a baseline. Once you get that baseline, then you got to use intuition, gut, and everything, and really get to know your people. Honestly, really get to know them, really get to know where they're well. But you still also have to maintain some distance and professionality, especially if you're in that leadership role, because you need to maintain that in order so that they respect whatever orders you give to them, or respect you in that role. And also as a leadership role, but something that a good leader also knows is that a good leader knows when to take charge and when to follow. I'm used to being a leader, but I'm also know that like if someone else is in that leadership role, I know to step back and let that person lead. Even if I don't agree with what they're doing, if they're taking on the risk and they're got that role, then that's up to them to make sure that they run whatever they're running the way they want to run. I've been in situations where you have got all these people that are trying to be in charge, and they're all butting heads and nothing gets done. So like I said, a good leader knows when to lead and when to follow.
When you're managing student teams, how do you foster both accountability and innovation in the high fidelity environment?
Well, I'll tell you, it's actually easier and harder at the same time. So everyone is a volunteer. So I can't treat them as, like I used to treat my younger Marines and direct and dictate them, or else no one will work. So you do have to treat them with a bit of respect, and knowing that, their time is valuable, and knowing that they're volunteering. And also, it also helps because they're volunteering, they want to do this kind of stuff, and they want to be there. So it's not like a 9 to 5 job where you're just like looking at the clock, waiting to trying to run it out. No, they want to do this. We definitely respect their time, respect them, give them a sense of purpose. Because if you just leave them idle for too long, they're going to lose interest and go do something else. And then keep them engaged.
So you've led and supported missions at the Integrated Lunar and Mars Analog Habitat, or ILMAH, in North Dakota, and Space Analog for the Moon and Mars, or SAM, in Arizona. How do those environments differ in terms of mission challenges?
Well, ILMA, actually, after our first iteration, ILMA was much easier. Everything's kind of laid out. It's our bread and butter. We know exactly what's going on. A lot of the documentation is already done. We have a big history of lessons learned. We have a big history of stuff that we can pull from, and we've been refining it constantly as we go along. And I think we're going along pretty fine. SAM was more difficult because it was new. And because it was new, there was a lot more unknowns. So when you have a lot more unknowns, you have a lot more risks, you have a lot more assumptions that you need to resolve. And so the difference is Sam was new, so it just required a lot more thinking, a lot more processing.
What are some of the most interesting experiments you've seen carried out under your watch?
Yeah, a lot of them are actually pretty unique. I like a lot of them. Some of the ones that stand out are definitely is the spirulina, because we've been doing that for a while, and that is definitely very interesting. I like the idea of how versatile it is, how useful it is, and actually being able to use that to encourage plants to grow in the soil to take out the harmfulness of the soil so it can be farmable, then you can start growing food. So definitely like the spirulina. There was also a couple of experiments dealing with I want to call them ergonomics with the suit, being able to
Hmm.
move, being able to grab things. We had one experiment where we actually built a test rig out of PVC pipes where they would have to go out and try to simulate a patch a hole in this PVC pipe and then actually have to turn knobs. That was kind of fun. And then there was the rescue sled. Rescue sled was good. Like that was a great idea. Is you use a sled in case there's someone incapacitated. You just can't take them out of the suit, so you have to, and you have to carry them back to the hab. So we had a rescue sled where they would actually tug that around and pull that. And yeah, there was I'd say those were some more my more memorable ones.
Do these research get, written and published, or what comes out of these research?
I'm pretty sure the sled has been researched and published, and the spirulina is ongoing. Yeah, a lot of these are getting published. And what's the great thing is about publishing these is that then now they can be built upon. So the whole idea of an analog is that we're testing things out here on Earth while things are safe before they go up there. So the more that we do here, the more analogs we do here, the more testing we do here, the more prepared we're going to be when we actually, get the game time.
Me being an analog explorer, I really enjoy the idea and the thought of being able to contribute to the space industry in that way with all the various research that I get to be part of.
Yeah, someone asked me when I was started doing all this, like, "Are you going to become an astronaut?" I'm just like, "Oh, I'm too broken, but I have no problem helping someone else do it." So,
So every analog mission comes with unexpected surprises. Can you share a moment when something didn't go as planned, and how did the crew adapt?
yeah, every time, uh, it's just the nature of the beast. Probably one of the more frustrating ones is when there was the failure of the suit dock. Oh, in the
Mm.
ILMA facility, the suits are actually up on a wall and they're docking up. And when you're about ready to go, you got all your planning done. You've done your pre-brief. You go and ran. You did a walkthrough with everyone there. You got one person in a suit. You go crawl. You're crawling in the other suit. You're in there. You're all suited up. You got everything on. It takes like a good 10, 15 minutes to get in the suit, and you're sitting there and you're sitting in a squat position. So your thighs are starting to burn. You're like, okay, let's do this. And they pull on the lever to release you, and it just, the internal mechanism slips and you're just stuck there. And one of the qualifying factors in our mission operation order is, especially considering how APUS, when we go up to ILMA, that is not our facility. So we're kind of guests there. So we don't want to do anything to break anything or anything that we don't have to. When you're in that position, right, and you're looking up there and you're looking at that mechanism, you're thinking, you know what, if I just take a screwdriver, I think I can get it loose. But we have something in our SOP that says if something is not working the way it's supposed to, you need to ask permission before you attempt to do a repair. And that right there is based upon our resource guidelines because we don't want to end up breaking something more or
Mhm.
using something that's not in a way it's intended to be made without the owner's permission. So at that point, like you're looking at it going, man, I've done all this. You just got to stop. And this happened to us on our ILMAH 4 mission. I think we had 2 or 3 EVAs that happened just like that. I mean, this is our first one. We haven't gone out the hatch yet, right? We've already had like 2 EVAs that were canceled because the mechanism broke. And we just have to stop, get out of the suit, take that 10 minutes to get out of there, get the other person out of their suit, stop, take a breather, get the camera out, take some pictures, maybe take a video, write it all up, send it all the way over to mission control, takes 20 minutes, then wait for them to contact UND, which probably could take another 10, 15 minutes, then another 20 minutes for it to come back from UND where they say, yeah, I should have stuck a screwdriver in there and fixed it. But that's just the nature of the beast. And just understanding that and just stopping, checking your emotions and just go, okay, it's going to be okay.
Mhm.
The sun will still come up the next day. We still got all our limbs. Everything's good. We couldn't get on EVA today. It's not the end of the world. Let's do this the right way. And I really like there's a line, I think in Apollo 13, where it's kind of like they're trying to figure out what's going on with the spacecraft. There's a line that says, let's work the problem. Let's not make it worse by guessing. And I really like to live with like that motto when it comes to these analogs. It's like work the problem. That's why we're here. We're not here to be space cowboys. We're not here to, try to find the workarounds. We're here to test and to verify that everything works correctly. And when it doesn't, we need to stop and we need to write it down and document it, and then so it can be fixed for future. Because if all we're doing is we're just sticking some bubble gums, some screwdrivers, doing whatever like this, it's not going to get fixed by the time it rolls up there.
Is there a buffer built into the schedules for stuff like that, or like the crew members living, minute to minute?
Oh yeah, there's plenty of buffer built into the schedule. So the schedules are actually built. So I don't really like to refer to them as schedules. I would like to refer to them as time allocation tables
Mm.
because my goal is to make sure that whatever we plan for that day fits into that day. And there's actually a lot of space in between. Like there might be like a 10-minute whatever, a 10-minute exercise or something. I'll put it in a 30-minute slot because I'm just trying to make sure everything fits there. Now, if they can accomplish everything earlier and they have more time at the end to do something else, or maybe they need, some free time. Free time is actually a very important thing when, it's something that should not be ignored. You do need time to decompress. You need time to rest. You also need time to bond as a crew. But yeah, so I'd like to think that there is plenty of time built in the schedule as much as we can. The days that are usually the busiest are those research heavy days with plants when we're doing harvest. Those right there are the days when I really feel for the crew because, they're working like a 12-hour shift. They're getting cross-blind by looking through the microscope. They're like, it's very repetitive. But other than that, yeah, we just try to give them as much time. And we also give the crew commander a lot of latitude to shift things if they need to. So I do have a line in our op order that says that the crew commander has a lot of latitude to do certain things, but just because they can does not negate the need for them to communicate that back to mission control. So yeah, they have a lot of power to do stuff, but they still have to tell us what's going on. They're just not out there all alone doing whatever they want. So
That's good. Good point. You've managed, planned, led several analog missions, in the last several years. How do you see analog missions evolving over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think they're going to get better in fidelity wise. I would love to actually see, and I think there was even talk of possibly like building a dome around ILMAH. That'd be awesome. And then you can actually project Mars out there. Maybe
Wow.
build like some Martian landscape stuff. But I see, I see them getting better, more closer to fidelity, more closer to truth. What I would really love to see is when we start doing more moon missions, and as we get closer to these moon missions and actually installing a moon base, is I'd love to see these people that are not only planning it, but actual mission controllers. I think it should be a requirement that they go through some of these um, analogs so they can get a good idea of what it's like and what they're dealing with, and building that empathy and building that that shared experience actually helps in the communication and can help with the mission overall.
I would love to see, higher fidelity. Last few questions. If you could design the next great analog facility from scratch, what would you include and why?
No, I think ILMAH is a very good analog of all the other ones I experienced. I didn't actually see SAM for it through my own eyes, but when it comes to, I mean, SAM definitely has its pluses, especially with being pressurized and being enclosed in there. And when I'm thinking, I mean, we'd love to have something like SAM and ILMAH combined together with lunaries and just take all the analogs, all the best parts of all of them, and just slap them
Yeah.
together, and you'll just have Mars on Earth. That would be awesome. But if you're talking about just one where you probably get like some of the best experiences, I think ILMAH is probably what is top tier in my opinion.
We are at a point where we do an open mic time. Anything you want to touch on that we haven't touched on, or something you want to cover?
I would like to give a congratulations here to Yuki, because he is now our flight director for ILMAH 10. So definitely a big shout out to him on that one.
Thank you. Yeah, I am looking forward to it. It's definitely scary, but also exciting at the same time.
Well, I have good news that you won't be going into alone. You're going to have myself and Santi there helping you out the whole way. So
I appreciate that. All right. So at the end, where can people find more information or follow your work?
I am on LinkedIn, but I think we're connected, aren't we?
Well, yeah. You and I are connected.
Yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah, you can drop the link in there.
Sounds good. Well, Dennis, thank you for sharing your experience and your knowledge, and thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing this.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to follow the Airlock Module podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a positive review or rating. It really helps the algorithm boost the show so that more people can discover these stories and join our growing analog astronaut community. You can also connect with me on social media, on Instagram, Threads, and on X. If you would like to go one step further in supporting the show, I've set up a Patreon where donations are just $3 a month. Your support helps cover the monthly costs of website hosting, editing software, podcast hosting, and other things that help improve the quality of what you hear. Every contribution goes right back into the podcast. I will also thank every contributor at the end of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being part of this journey. Until next time.